Okay, hello and welcome everyone to this session. It is my pleasure to introduce Charles Williams and JC Shelley with Pioneer Realty Capital to our live viewers. If you have any questions throughout the session today, please go ahead and share them in the live chat box. It is on the right-hand side of your video player. Time permitting, we'll see if we can get to those questions at the end of the session. And with that said, Charles and JC, I will hand the mic over to you. I'll be here if you need me, but the floor is all yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And good morning, good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for joining us for the Money Show's virtual expo. My name is JC Shelley, and I am the VP of Investor Relations for Pioneer Realty Capital. And today we are presenting the PRC Equity Fund. I just want to show our disclaimer here. For more than 23 years, PRC has focused on real estate investment with a disciplined approach. If you look at the economic landscape today, there's certainly no shortage of uncertainty. We're seeing geopolitical tensions around the world, ongoing market volatility, fluctuation in energy prices, and even a labor market that has begun to soften in certain areas. Interest rates remain a major topic of discussion, and many investors are trying to determine where stability and long-term opportunity exist in an environment that can feel unpredictable. But historically, some of the best investments emerge during periods like this, when disciplined investors focus on fundamentals rather than headlines. And at Pioneer Realty Capital, we focus on structural trends that continue regardless of economic cycles. And one of the most powerful trends shaping the global economy today is the technological revolution we're all witnessing. I'm sure you've heard artificial intelligence, advanced computing, automation, and digital infrastructure. They're all rapidly transforming industries across the world. And as technology advances, the demand for educated and highly skilled individuals increases right alongside it. And the places where those individuals are trained, where innovation is researched, where the next generation of engineers, scientists, and entrepreneurs are developed are our universities. University continues to attract students, faculty, researchers, and professionals year after year. And while technology may change how we work, one thing remains constant. People need a place to live. So that's why university housing has historically demonstrated consistent demand and resilience even during broader economic shifts. And recognizing this opportunity, Pioneer Realty Capital launched the PRC Equity Fund in October of 2024. This fund was created to allow investors to participate in the development and acquisition of student housing and university adjacent communities located near large public universities, where markets are supported by enrollment growth, research activity, and long-term population inflows. So in a moment, you're going to hear more about the fund and our strategy from someone who has spent decades building Pioneer Realty Capital into what it is today. In a moment, I'll introduce Charles Williams. But before we proceed, I'd like you to take a brief look at a brief introductory video that provides a little bit more information about the PRC Equity Fund.
For more than 20 years, Pioneer Realty Capital has helped investors build wealth through integrity, innovation, and a commitment to communities. Founded in 2003, PRC has grown into a trusted national leader in commercial real estate finance, powered by a diverse team dedicated to excellence, transparency, and results. At PRC, we believe investing should create value, not just for investors, but for entire communities. The PRC Equity Fund is our way of making that mission real. We deliver strong returns by developing student, workforce, and affordable housing while helping families thrive.
Hi, my name is Charles Williams, and I am the President and CEO of Pioneer Realty Capital. The PRC Equity Fund is designed to support our efforts to provide and to acquire and develop student housing. The investment model adds value because it allows everyday investors to participate and an institutional qualified investment opportunity.
Through the PRC Equity Fund, investors earn a 10% annual dividend and a share in 70% of profits, all while funding high-demand student housing backed by innovative bond finance structures that reduce risk and maximize long-term value. With every project, PRC is reshaping what responsible investing looks like, combining institutional-grade returns with measurable social impact. When you invest with the PRC Equity Fund, you're partnering with a company built on trust and joining us in building tomorrow's communities. Together, we create wealth with purpose.
Awesome. So the PRC Equity Fund allows us to acquire, improve, and develop attainable student housing, properties that serve everyday American students, properties that our communities rely on. But at the same time, it also provides investors with a structured, reliable pathway to long-term value. So in a moment, Charles and I will walk through the PRC Equity Fund in more detail. We'll talk about how it's structured, what we target, and why we believe it's well positioned to where the world is headed. We'll also talk through upcoming transactions we're anticipating closing over the next few months. We'll look at the housing gap, why the need for student housing is urgent. Next, we'll walk through how the PRC Equity Fund operates, how it generates that income, and what makes it resilient in today's market. And finally, we'll talk about the measurable good this fund creates, how the PRC Equity Fund partners with a 501c3 nonprofit to aid in combating homelessness throughout our communities. So it is my pleasure to introduce Pioneer Realty Capital's CEO and managing member, Mr. Charles Williams, to talk about the problem and the market opportunity. And Mr. Charles, it appears you may be muted.
Thank you very much, JC, and
Yes.
thank you all for attending our presentation today. So today I want to go over the problem that we're solving. And as you know, every great investment opportunity starts with solving a problem. And the problem that we're solving is centered around the housing crisis, but more specifically, student housing. Now, what caused this problem? Well, every time there's a reset in the economy and capital dries up, then there's not money available for housing. And we've had a number of crises that's disrupted the housing supply, specifically student housing supply, over the years. For instance, from 1986 to 1995, we had the savings and loan crisis. And so that caused there to not be liquidity or capital available for new development. And that lasted almost 10 years. And then in the 2000s, from the year 2000 to 2002, we had the dot-com recession. And then from 2007 to 2009, we had a massive drop in construction lending from the global financial crisis. And then in 2010 to 2015, there was a shortage of capital made available for development. And then, of course, in 2020, we had the pandemic. And right now, we're dealing with inflation and rate shock. So what that means is 10 years ago, when we were right in the middle of the pandemic, rates were very, very low. And so there were a lot of development firms went out and developed at low interest rates. Well, now many of those loans are coming due and they're unable to refinance, which is putting quite a bit of pressure and stress on lending institutions. So that's created a problem when it comes to student housing in general, because generally that student housing is going to be developed in what we call a college town, a very small market. The primary demographic does not have a job. They're usually dependent on aid in order to pay for their college expenses or on their parents. And so the large developers are going to be reluctant to going into those college towns and building student housing. And then, of course, the university, their primary goal is not to provide housing. Their primary goal is to provide education. So the many foundations and the state capital that's available to the university, its intended purpose is to provide those academic buildings and facilities that support direct education and not necessarily housing. What you generally see is that freshmen are required to live on campus, but once you get past your freshman year, those students are expected to find residence outside of campus, what we call off-campus student housing. And so what's happened is the universities have realized that if a developer can't get the capital to come in and develop, then they're going to have a shortage of housing for their students, and that's what we're experiencing today. And in order to solve that problem, universities have figured out that they're going to have to enter into a partnership to reduce the risk of that developer. And so as we go through our business model today, you're going to see how that partnership works and how it's structured to solve the housing gap among our public universities. Now, the question is, why student housing? Why is this particular investment category attractive for you and investors like you? One, stable enrollment. And when we talk about the stable enrollment, JC mentioned this briefly, but consider the fact that we are in a technological revolution. And so in order to participate in this new economy, you have to have a skill set that you generally are not going to get just coming out of high school. You have to go to college. And many of these courses and certifications that are required, you have to get that education, training, and experience with a on-campus education. And some of these fields that are going to be the highest paying and have the most demand include computer science, especially as it relates to AI, engineering throughout all the various engineering disciplines, medicine, particularly with nurse practitioners and nurses as our population continues to age, data scientists, statistics, economics and finance, biotechnology. These are the emerging fields, and these are the types of subjects that students are going to have to be trained in order to participate in this new economy. So the demand for education is high, and it is recession resistant. But if these students are going to get an education, they're going to have a place to live. And so with the limited supply that we're seeing on campuses today, then universities are highly motivated to solve this student housing issue. And this creates a significant benefit for you, the prospective investor. So just a brief recap of what we talked about. This student housing has a growing demand, is recession resistant, stable occupancies because of the demand creates reliable cash flow. And then private capital is uniquely positioned to fill this gap. And as we go through our structure, you'll see how in a very unique way, we leverage the capital markets to bring the type of capital into these projects to make sure that the student housing is developed. But before we go on to our next section, JC is going to play another brief video.
Across America, thousands of college students are struggling with something most people never see: housing insecurity. When students can't find stable housing, when they're couch surfing, commuting hours, or choosing between rent and groceries, they are far less likely to graduate. Housing insecurity is one of the strongest predictors of dropout rates. And demand is exploding. Enrollment is rising. Campus housing is full. And universities can't build fast enough to keep up. This shortage has created one of the most urgent and underserved needs in higher education. For investors, this isn't just a crisis, it's a category-defining opportunity. A chance to help build the student housing students desperately need while earning strong, predictable, risk-adjusted returns. Because when students have a safe place to live, they're far more likely to stay in school, graduate, and succeed. And together, we can help make that possible. PRC Equity Fund, investing in students, investing in futures.
So now please give your attention to Mr. J.C. Shelley as he introduces the PRC Equity Fund and demonstrates why this is a plausible solution to a problem that's facing our students and our universities.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Charles. And thank you again for taking time out of your morning to hear us speak about this opportunity. So as Mr. Charles mentioned, in my portion of this presentation, I want to talk about the solution. I'll walk through two essential components of the PRC Equity Fund. First, I'll explain how the fund itself works, how we deploy capital, how we generate returns, and why our structure is uniquely designed to protect investor capital. Then I'll cover the investor benefits and the overall model behind the fund. So this section is all about understanding what the PRC Equity Fund is and why our strategy offers both strong returns and strong protection for investor capital. I do want to note that investors do participate, earning an annualized 10%, which distributions are paid monthly. And investors also participate in a 70% profit share. But the PRC Equity Fund is the investment arm of our platform. It is a Regulation A evergreen fund that has been qualified by the SEC to issue securities to both accredited and non-accredited investors. So it does provide a very high level of transparency, including audited financials, which may provide a little bit more comfort to investors considering taking advantage of this opportunity. But the purpose of the PRC Equity Fund is to provide that earliest and most critical stage of capital for student housing projects, or what we call pursuit or pre-development capital. Those early costs can include earnest money if we're acquiring a property. It can include the cost for land acquisition, entitlements, engineering, architectural design, third-party reports, any of those costs before a site goes vertical that's needed to get it shovel ready. Most developers struggle at this stage because the capital required is high risk and must be deployed long before construction financing is secured. And that's where the PRC Equity Fund fills that gap. It provides that fast, flexible capital, accelerating the development or the acquisition timeline and ensuring high quality student housing projects can move forward quickly. As I mentioned before, our primary customer is Project PRC, which is a 501c3 nonprofit developer specializing in not just mission-driven student housing, but also affordable and workforce housing. Project PRC sources these opportunities nationwide, but needs that early capital to be able to move quickly on promising opportunities. And that's where the PRC Equity Fund steps in. The PRC Equity Fund provides that capital needed to secure the land, complete design work, prepare that project for financing. And because Project PRC is a 501c3 nonprofit, it has the ability to issue tax-exempt municipal bonds and essentially has access to unlimited capital once a project is secured. Now, when those bonds close, typically within 60 to 90 days, the PRC Equity Fund is repaid at a 2x return. So that money that we invest on the front end is received fairly quickly in that transaction. So for example, if the fund invests $3 million in a project, 60 to 90 days later, it will receive $6 million back at bond closing. In addition to that, once the project is completed, PRC Equity Fund also receives the remaining balance of those bond proceeds or the developer balance. And these proceeds often exceed 10 to 20% of the total development costs. So the combination of that 2x return and the remaining bond proceeds allows PRC Equity Fund to do a few things. It allows us to recycle that capital into additional developments. So you cannot think of the PRC Equity Fund as your typical real estate investment. This is an evergreen fund. There is no explicit end date, so it is open-ended. But for the lifetime of your investment, you're earning that annualized 10%, which is paid monthly, and participating in that profit share. But these transactions that were completing, there will be transactions completed simultaneously throughout the year, generating that value for the PRC Equity Fund and for our investors. And this cycle just repeats across multiple developments, multiple acquisitions every year. And that allows our investors to participate in the PRC Equity Fund. Now, as Charles and I mentioned, one of the most attractive features about our model is the natural downside protection and being invested in an asset class that is recession proof. But because these tax exempt bond closings occur within 60 to 90 days, our exposure window is short. So that capital is deployed, that capital is multiplied, and that capital is returned quickly. Like I said, in traditional real estate opportunities, capital might be tied up for years before any liquidity event occurs. But with the PRC Equity Fund, investors can benefit from early liquidity, rapid recycling, and a much shorter risk horizon while still participating in the long-term profit potential. And I do have another video that I'd like to bring your attention to, and then I'll hand it back over to Mr. Charles to talk about a little bit more about that 501c3 partnership with the nonprofit.
Across the country, students are being turned away from campus housing. Dorms are full, waitlists are growing, and the shortage is getting worse. PRC Equity Fund is stepping in with a powerful solution, developing modern, safe, university-supported student housing in the communities that need it most. Our projects deliver real impact, more beds for students, more stability for universities, and stronger communities built on access and opportunity. And for investors, PRC Equity Fund provides a predictable 10% annual dividend paid monthly, plus 70% of project profits. It's consistent income backed by one of the most resilient real estate sectors in America. With our partnership through Project PRC, students receive rental assistance and eviction avoidance support, reducing delinquencies and protecting investor returns, while empowering students to stay in school and stay housed. PRC Equity Fund, solving the student housing crisis, delivering predictable returns, and creating social impact that lasts for generations.
Awesome. And at this time, I'll hand it back over to Mr. Charles to talk about the Social Impact Engine Project PRC.
Thank you very much, JC. So the key to this making this investment is our customer, Project PRC, which is a charitable nonprofit. And the charitable nonprofit is key because it has access to the tax-exempt municipal bond market. So virtually it has access to unlimited liquidity in the market. And so think of PRC Equity Fund as a bridge lender, if you will, that provides that upfront capital to this public charity. And the public charity has a pipeline of capital available to it through the tax-exempt municipal bond market. But it's important to understand exactly how this charity works. It is a true charity that reduces the burden of government. And in doing so, that's what gives it access to the tax-exempt municipal bond market. Please follow this brief video that gives you a little more information, and then we'll talk about some of the charitable mission, and some of the results of the impact this charity has had on students that reside at some of our properties.
Every year, thousands of college students face housing insecurity, a growing crisis that threatens academic success and long-term stability. Project PRC is a nonprofit created to change that. Our mission is simple: keep students housed, supported, and on the path to graduation. At the heart of our work is the innovative rent subsidy program. In select student housing communities owned by Project PRC, a portion of the property's net operating income is used to fund rent subsidies for students at risk of losing housing. This unique subsidy program gives universities a powerful reason to partner with Project PRC, often leading to master leases, letters of support, and affiliation agreements that strengthen community stability and enhance student success. Project PRC also plays a critical role in capitalizing student housing developments through the tax-exempt bond market. This structure supports the acquisition and development of new projects and provides the repayment source that drives returns for investors in the PRC Equity Fund. Together, Project PRC, Pioneer Realty Capital, and the PRC Equity Fund are solving student housing insecurity and empowering investors to build communities while building wealth.
So hopefully you see that Project PRC is a firm that has a real mission for making an impact with regards to students that we serve. It also has an impact with regards to affordable housing and workforce housing. The way Project PRC works, it identifies residents that are facing housing insecurity. We have caseworkers to help identify solutions to their problem with regards to paying rent. And then we also offer that support by partnering with other charities to solve that problem. But the primary charitable assets that this nonprofit uses are its rental assistance program, its eviction avoidance program, and then the rent subsidy program. And the rent subsidy program is very interesting because what we do is when we partner with a university, we will take a portion of the proceeds that are collected from rent and use that to fund a subsidy pool. And then we give the university control over that subsidy pool to assist students who are facing housing insecurity, or they are perhaps at risk of dropping out of school because they can't pay the rent. Now, in exchange for giving the university access to that subsidy pool, we asked the university to form a partnership with us, either through an affiliation agreement or through a master lease. And when they sign these agreements with the nonprofit, that is the demonstration that we are reducing the burden of government. And by showing that we're reducing the burden of government, that allows the nonprofit to qualify for tax exempt municipal bond financing. And so the partnership between PRC Equity Fund and Project PRC, simply stated, is this. Project PRC is the owner and operator of the student housing project, but PRC Equity Fund provides that initial capital that's required to get the project to the stage where Project PRC can close a tax exempt municipal bond to finance the acquisition or development of the project. So PRC Equity Fund plays a very critical role and making sure that initial capital is there and made available in order for Project PRC to secure that longer term financing. And because of its role in that partnership, we're able to create value for you, the investor. The role that you play as an investor is extremely important because it's that money that's needed at a very critical stage. But those investors in our fund are rewarded for that. Not only are you having a social impact because of the money is being used to support the nonprofit organization, but you're also being rewarded economically. And that kind of fits our motto. We believe you can do well by doing good. And that's exactly how this fund is structured. And so to show the true impact that our organization, Project PRC, is having, please take a look at the following video.
At Project PRC, our mission is to keep students housed, supported, and able to focus on their future. The story you're about to hear comes from a resident at the 625 at Prairie View Community, a student whose life was changed through our rental assistance program.
Hi, my name is Alana Jackson, and I'm currently a student at Prairie View A&M University, and I'm a junior biology major. One of the main challenges I've been facing is that I got into a car accident in March, so it's been a little bit hard getting help with getting a job in order to pay my rent. And also, I come from a single parent household, so my mom having to pay her own rent also conflicts with me having to pay my own rent, so I don't have that much help. It really released the financial burden off of me because it was pouring into my studies. It caused me stress because I was often worrying about paying my rent on time and then also getting my grades done. And I believe that every student should have a chance to not have to worry about paying bills when education is important as well.
Stories like hers remind us why Project PRC exists. To provide hope, stability, and opportunity for students in need. Together, we're building stronger communities, one life at a time.
Thank you for watching that. So to give you a better understanding of how you can potentially benefit as an investor, JC, it will go over the investor benefits, how we use the funds, and how this is potentially a great opportunity for you to get involved in. So let's give our attention to JC Shelley.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Charles. So now that we've covered the problem, we've talked about the solution and our biggest partner, we want to talk about how the PRC Equity Fund operates. So the income, the upside, and the financial structure behind the fund. There are three major benefits that investors consistently point to. As I mentioned earlier, first is the stability that comes from the student housing market as an asset class. Secondly, it's that monthly income. The fund pays that annualized 10% monthly. And lastly, it is that upside. In addition to getting your annualized 10%, you're also participating in a 70% profit share every year. How the fund is structured, it is structured as an LLC and taxed as a partnership. To many investors, it does make a difference how that income is treated, but investors do receive a K-1 every year. Many of our investors have invested using retirement dollars through what's called a self-directed IRA or SDIRA, but you can invest using a self-directed IRA. You can invest as an individual, you can invest as a company, or you can even invest as a trust. Investors certainly have the options to choose on how they invest in the PRC Equity Fund. This investment is entirely passive. So PRC manages all of the acquisitions, all of the developments, the operations, and the reportings. And as I mentioned earlier, this is a Regulation A fund that has been qualified by the SEC. So the fund does operate under strong transparency and compliance standards. We often encourage our investors to visit the SEC's website. You can visit their EDGAR platform. You can validate that the PRC Equity Fund has been qualified by the SEC. You can also visit our fund's website at prcequityfund.com. there you'll have access to the offering circular. And those are the guidelines that have been submitted to the SEC, whereby we're bound to operate this fund accordingly. And a lot of other information is there as well. But again, you can visit prcequityfund.com. And Mr. Charles talked about the use of funds. Your investment is very important because it serves a very critical role in the process of either acquiring or developing these properties. But those funds, that capital provides funds for us to pursue new student housing developments, fund pre-development activities, or complete value-add improvements to existing opportunities or existing communities. And these uses directly increase project efficiency, accelerate delivery, and support the long-term growth of the fund. And over these next couple of slides, I just want to provide projections on what an investment could look like for an investor in 2026 and 2027. But I just want to help investors understand that these are projections. Returns are based off of the performance of the fund. And Mr. Charles will provide a little bit more insight to the projected net profit that helps support our numbers here. But this investment is based off of a $500,000 investment. I would ask that you keep in mind, as a Regulation A fund, SEC allows us to raise up to 75 million. So the total possible number of shares in the fund would be 75,000. But in my example, we're basing this off of a total outstanding balance of 9,000 shares. So the profit share is based off of the number of outstanding shares. So if an investor makes a $500,000 investment, that provides that investor with 500 units. Taking into account January 1 to December 31, this investor's annualized 10% would be $50,000. And for 2026, their portion of the profit share would be an additional $233,000 for a total return in 26 of $258,000. In 2027, we're projecting a bit of an increase in the projected net profit. So again, here with the $500,000 investment, this investor's annualized 10% is $50,000, and the investor's portion of the profit share is an additional $777,000. And in 27, for a total projected return of $827,000. So I do have one last video to share, and this just allows you to hear from a couple of our investors who have been participating in the PRC Equity Fund and receiving their monthly distributions consistently. So if you will just take your attention to this brief video, and then we'll hand it back over to Mr. Charles to wrap it up for us, take any questions that we might have, and also talk through upcoming transactions that we're looking to close.
So there were two things. I did compare. They had 10% annual dividend. The other thing that drew me to it was the leadership team. I was really impressed with how diversified the PRC leadership team is. I definitely like their mission around the student housing. Being able to provide quality housing for students, that's important.
I've got a couple of college degrees. I know what it's like to need a place to live, and it's a good investment. Help out the student. I thought it was just a good cause. And I'll tell you, I've been getting my 10% monthly payments. It's a good deal. I would highly recommend these guys. If you're looking to invest, solid professionalism, people with heart, people that have a cause that's bigger than just the money, I know you're going to go with them.
Investors choose the PRC Equity Fund for reliability, integrity, and results. With a proven track record of consistent monthly dividends and a mission that builds both wealth and community, PRC continues to be a fund investors can count on.
Awesome. Thank you for viewing the video. And again, at this time, I'd like to hand it back over to Mr. Charles to talk through some upcoming transactions and to take any additional questions that we might have. So, Mr. Charles, back to you, sir.
Thank you very much, JC. And again, we want to thank you guys for taking your time out to view our presentation. What I'd like to do is just kind of recap the opportunity so that you know how we generate cash for you, and talk about how you can get involved with this opportunity. We provide capital for our nonprofit organization to acquire and develop student housing. And so, as I mentioned, PRC Equity Fund is not the owner of the student housing, so we're not exposed to operational risk. And the majority of the uh, funds that we receive back at a very early stage in the process when the nonprofit organization is able to close its tax-exempt financing through the bond market. To participate in this opportunity, the minimum investment is $5,000. As JC mentioned, this is a Regulation A fund, and we created it so that non-accredited investors could participate in the fund. We have operated successfully other funds. We actually have other funds that we operate in addition to this Reg A fund, but those are only available to accredited investors, and they have to meet a very high standard in order to participate in these investment opportunities. So we wanted to create an institutional styled investment where you would receive a 10% distribution on your investment each year, and then you would get to share in 70% of those profits that are earned. And I'm going to show here in just a second what our projections are based on for 2026 and 2027. We have a number of deals in the pipeline that we're working to close over the next couple of months that will generate the bulk of what we feel is at $6 million. The process for investing with us is fairly simple. It's a matter of connecting with JC, as I mentioned, this being a SEC qualified investment opportunity. There are some hoops you have to jump through, very small. There's a process. The entire fund has to meet compliance with FINRA, and that is managed through our broker dealer, which is Texture Capital. But that provides a layer of comfort for you as an investor, because you know that in order for us to remain in compliance with the Securities and Exchange Commission and with FINRA, there are certain things that have to be governed and controlled. But once you apply, JC will walk you through that process. Then you fund your investment. 45 to 60 days later, you can expect to start receiving your portion of that 10% distribution. And then at the end of the year, our financials are audited. And based on the audited results of those financials, we determine what that profit distribution is, which is 70% of whatever the profit we earned that year. And then those distributions you can expect to receive around the first of the year. Now, I'm going to show my screen so that I can demonstrate some of the projects that we're working on closing in our pipeline right now. And you can see the volume of deals that we are actively working on. I'm going to show you existing properties that we are working to acquire, and what the dollar amount of those are. And then I'm going to show you our development pipeline that we're working on with Texas A&M University Systems to provide development for those as well. And keep in mind that we currently own assets with the nonprofit We own a student housing development at the campus of Prairie View A&M University. We are submitting a bond transaction to be closed here soon, within the next 60 days, we hope, with Texas, with that particular project that we already own. And that's a $135 million transaction. And so, again, allow me to share my screen here. Um, what you're looking at now is a portfolio that we're looking to acquire. Um, you can see that there are a number of universities here. This is a portfolio. It's valued at about 549 million. I can tell you that's not what we're going to pay for it. But our nonprofit will acquire this. But what's unique and what qualifies this transaction for us is that all of these properties are already under a master lease. So these are under a triple net lease with these universities. And so that in itself qualifies these transactions for tax exempt municipal bond financing. PRC Equity Fund will provide the initial capital for the earnest money deposit, for all the inspections, appraisals, the market studies. If required, we may not require market studies on these since they're already under a master lease, but that upfront capital that's necessary before we can close the bond transaction, that capital will come from PRC Equity Fund. And ultimately, once we close the bond transaction, that money is returned to PRC Equity Fund, and our target is to achieve a 2x multiple. In addition to that, and this is just one university that we're working with, but this is the Texas A&M University system, which we already own property that serves the Texas A&M University system. This is their project planning report. It highlights over $1 billion worth of development opportunities at Texas A&M. And this is just one university system in the state of Texas. There are 8 university systems in Texas. Now we do projects all over the United States. We actually are working on a deal with the city of New York for some housing as well. So, and we have projects that we're looking at in Ohio and other places. But just to demonstrate the demand for housing projects, you're looking at over $1 billion of development projects over the next 5 years with just one university system. Now, I can tell you we're not going to do all 1 billion of these because of the size of our company and the scope of what we're able to do. But I can assure you that we're going to be involved with some of these. And so, and then another report I wanted to show you is an enrollment report. This
Hi,
is
Charles. I'm
Not
so
to
sorry
interrupt
to
you, but
interrupt.
we're a little bit over time. Just
okay. Okay.
just
All
FYI.
right. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap up. So, well, again, let me just thank everybody for being a part of our presentation. And again, I apologize for running a little late.
No, that is okay. Charles, I let you run a little late because I feel like the audience was really taking in what you were presenting. And I just wanted to let them enjoy the rest of your presentation. So we do have some questions in the chat. I know we are out of time here today, but to those of you watching live, we will be sure to send your questions along to Charles and JC so that they can reach out and answer them. And with that said, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. Fantastic presentation. It's a pleasure to have you on. And everyone watching live, be sure to stay tuned as we do have more in store for you in this Money Show Virtual Expo. I hope you have a
Awesome.
wonderful rest of your day.
You too, Charlotte.